Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to a short video just going through some advice for BSS044-3 Assessment 1. So this is for International Business Management. So in this video we're going to just look over the assessment task, some useful concepts and theories that you should use or you can use in your work, sources of information, and a suggested structure. There is no mandated structure for this assignment. Everyone is going to have a range of different companies they're looking at, different recommendations, different markets to enter. So you should choose a structure that works best for your report and your recommendation. But we are going to run through a possible structure that may be useful. So if we start with the assignment task itself, so it is a written report, so it's a formal business report. It's worth 40% of your unit grade overall, and the assignment length is 3,000 words. So that's plus or minus 10%, as is usual within the university. So you have a maximum word count of 3,300 words. With your additional 10%. We're aiming to demonstrate both understanding of international business operations as well as being able to use research concepts and frameworks to evaluate practice. So the way we're going to be doing this is by taking a particular company, which should be an international business, obviously, and writing a report which analyzes both the existing operation of the company and ends with a recommendation of a new market to enter. So that's a new country to enter and an entry mode to use. So that sounds pretty broad, and it is, but we're going to be using the academic models, concepts, theories which are relevant to support our argument. So your focus should always be on your recommendations, and then the choice of concepts, models, and theories that you're using, the topics you're discussing should all be there to support your recommendation. So the assignment brief does say that the company will be allocated to you, but having discussed with your tutors, and this unit is being delivered across a range of different campuses, you should already know that your tutors are happy for you to suggest a company to use. They would like you to discuss this with them in the class, so they can provide you with some feedback on the appropriateness of the company you're suggesting. We're generally quite open with the company that you may choose to use, but there are some things that we would like to feedback on. Firstly, if you choose a business which is very local, a hyper local business, or a very small national company, there may be a lack of information available to it. This includes companies that you may have individual knowledge of. Maybe you're working at a company or you're familiar with the people who run the company, but if it is a company that has no publicly accessible information or limited publicly accessible information, then it really is not going to be appropriate, because we simply cannot verify the information that you're presenting, and you're not able to demonstrate the full range of research skills and abilities that we're assessing in the end report. Similarly, if you're choosing a company which is absolutely huge, so let's say a company like Nike or Coca-Cola or even McDonald's, you're going to really struggle to identify a reasonable new market to enter. Nike are already operating in pretty much every market that it makes sense for them to operate in. Same thing with McDonald's, really. Same thing with Coke. There are very few, if any, new markets that you can make a strong case, a reasonable case for them to enter. If this is the case, you will end up either recommending an inappropriate market. So, North Korea, for example, has, Nike is not operating there, neither is Coke. But that's not really a recommendation you're going to be able to make a strong argument for. Or you'll end up recommending they enter a market they're already operating in, which is outside the requirements of the assessment brief, which doesn't meet the task that's being set. However, there are lots of companies in between there that you can choose that have that are large enough for you to choose, to find interesting, credible information on, but at the same time have lots of expansion potential. Companies like for Amazon, for example, only actually operate in about 20 markets. There's lots of household names and very prominent companies like Tesla that have tons and tons of expansion potential, lots of possible recommendations to enter as well. Just a few notes to be made here. You are using both information on your company as well as the academic literature. So we do want to have a balance of research, and also fairly recent trends such as the COVID-19 pandemic changing trade patterns, as well as Brexit. If you're looking at a UK based company, these are things that we do expect you to address and take into account if they are relevant. So if both your company and your recommendation has no real impact, but through the COVID-19 pandemic or changing trade patterns, then that's fine. That's not something to address. But if there is an impact, then we do expect that to be directly addressed within your report. So the required elements, so a formal report structure, it is a formal business report using a company that you've discussed and agreed with your tutors. You must have a recommendation of a new market, meaning a new national market, a new country to enter, with a specific entry mode to use. So that's FDI, exporting, joint venture, some kind of specific entry mode to actually enter that market. There must be a process log, a self-assessment based process log, and there is a template on the brochure, so that should be included as Appendix A. And there should also be a reflection as Appendix B, reflecting on your assignment process. This should use a recognized reflective model. I know that I think everyone would have used or covered Gibbs or Kolb in previous units, so we do recommend using one of those. But if you want to use another reflective model, that's fine, as long as it is a recognized reflective model, making sure you reference and cite it as appropriate. So your reflection is really focused on your assignment process. So the process of starting the assignment, gathering the information, making key decisions on structure and approach, gathering the information through research as well, both academic and non-academic information, writing, editing, reviewing, and then submitting the work. Right, so in terms of what concepts and theories that can be used, so this is not an exhaustive list at all. So if there are other concepts or theories that we've either covered in the unit, or indeed you've come about through your own reading, or from the reading list or the core textbooks, or even just general journal article reading, and you feel that it is relevant and helpful to your argument, then you absolutely can and should include it as well. But as a starting point, the assignment brief also does run through recommended elements that we think it is very useful and helpful to consider. So what we have here are political risks, legal systems, cultural distance, international supply chains, economic trade and trading blocks, international marketing, forex, and currency risks. So what you should do is, when you've done your initial research, you've chosen a company, you've familiarized yourself with how they currently operate, and you've considered some new markets to enter, then you should really take a look at this list and decide which which items on this list are most important in order to present a strong argument for your recommendation. So things like political risks are going to be most important if there are a degree, or there is a degree of political instability or potential risk within your recommended market to enter. So if it's a region with a degree of catastrophic risk or high catastrophic risk, then obviously that's something you'll have to carefully consider, apply the concept of political risk, and have that as a major part of your discussion within your assignment. If the new market you're going to enter has a high degree of distributive risk, so if there's a risk of significant taxation, of significant government intervention, where there is concerns over protection of private assets, then again, a lot of your report, or a significant section of your report, should be dedicated to discussing those risks. When you're creating your argument, a strong argument is not one which ignores potential drawbacks, disadvantages, or risks. You don't want to ignore and pretend and just have a wholly positive report. You need to acknowledge and discuss these risks, and make your case as to why, despite the risks or despite the disadvantages, there is still a very strong case, or you still strongly recommend a particular market to enter. Or indeed, you could discuss ways that these risks can be mitigated or managed. Similar thing with legal systems as well. If your new market to enter has a very similar legal system, so either they're both rule of law or rule of man, excuse me, or they're both civil law systems, or they're both common law systems, then this is likely not going to be a huge part of your report. But if there is significant differences in legal systems, then that may be something you spend a bit more time on. Very similar thing with cultural distance as well. If there is a significant cultural distance between your country of operation, so your country your business is based in, the head office, if you will, and your recommendation, then using Hofstede or Trompenaars should be part of a major section in your report. Also, you have to bear in mind that some products and services, or some industries, are far more culturally dependent than others. So if you're dealing with a company that creates electronics, laptops, for example, then the degree of cultural difference in how those products are understood and used is relatively small. However, if you're selling clothing, if you're selling food, then those are highly culturally dependent products and services, and cultural distance matters a lot more. So therefore should be a far bigger part of your argument as well. I think everyone has covered Trompenaars and Hofstede, so please do make sure you use a recognized theory, one of those two, when discussing cultural distance in your reports. Almost everyone should really be concerned with international supply chains. Particularly, most international businesses will have international rather than national domestic supply chains as part of the structural benefit to having an international rather than strictly national business, taking advantage of international supply chains. So having a section where you discuss how those supply chains function, and how it would work with a new market to entry. So if you're using an overarching theory, such as Uppsala, which looks at expanding from neighboring country to neighboring country, that presents you a strong case to talk about extending supply chains gradually. You're not a company that only operates in South America, suddenly having to develop supply chains to expand into Vietnam or China. So there's certainly clear elements of discussion there. It is worth taking close consideration of economic and trading blocks as well. So if your country is a European country within the EU, and you're looking to expand to another EU country as well, then that's part of a single market. There's going to be no issues around regulations. There's going to be no issues around import-export tariffs, or indeed any additional taxes. So there's a clear advantage or boost to your argument for your recommendation there. If you are recommending outside of the EU, if for a European country, then you need to take into account the actual trading relationship, whether there's going to be a disadvantage with regards to tariffs or entry barriers, and any other considerations as well. That is connected somewhat to forex and currency risks as well. So taking into account and discussing the relationship between the two currencies you're considering. So the currency of the home market and the currency of the new market that you're recommending to enter. And again, referring back to the week that we had on the foreign exchange markets, forex, and the different currency risks, translation risks, and so on, transaction risks that we covered that week as well. Lastly, although I've skipped around the order a bit, international marketing is something which you may want to have some attention on also, particularly if there is significant cultural distance. And there is a week on international marketing that will be helpful for this. The greater the cultural distance, then the more impact this has on your approach to international marketing. So if there is large cultural distance and your product is culturally dependent, has a big impact of national culture on your product or service, then a large section on international marketing may also be useful or helpful. Now, you only have 3,000 words for your report, so we do not expect everyone to cover all of these unit concepts and theories. You simply wouldn't have the space or the time to look at all of them in depth. But we do expect you to think logically about which of these elements would have the biggest impact on your recommendation, and therefore which is most important for you to discuss in order to present a strong recommendation. So that's the key thing. That is something which you are being evaluated and assessed on. That ability to demonstrating your understanding, not through just discussion of particular relevant concepts and theories, but also in your ability to identify which concepts and theories kind of come together to make the most compelling, logical, and strong argument for your recommendation. Right, so moving on to the information that you should use. So we've got two major types of research that we're aiming to encourage here. So we have academic citations to support the discussions of key international business concepts, theories, and models, as well as credible non-academic citations, particularly those relating to the organization as well as the country or countries under consideration. So you need to demonstrate your ability to do both. So if you're looking at currency risks, you're looking at translation and transaction risks, then we would expect some academic citations from this. Those are covered in the core textbook. There's lots of journal articles talking about forex and currency risk as well. So demonstrating your ability to actually jump into the academic literature and find relevant, useful information. However, if you're talking in part of the same section on forex or currency risks, you would also presumably want to kind of talk about or discuss how volatile the exchange rate between the two currencies is. That's not something you're going to find in a textbook. That is something you'll find on a credible non-academic website. However, there's lots of credible websites tracking currency fluctuations and currency exchange rates. So you can see in the same section, you'd have both academic citations from academic textbooks or academic journal articles talking about the concept of translation risk or transaction risk when it comes to currency exchanges, as well as credible non-academic citations discussing the actual exchange rate between the two currencies you're discussing. So we want to combine both as much as possible. The current up-to-date information about your organization and the countries that you're considering from credible sources. You've got loads to choose from. We're going to discuss a few more in the next slide. But as well as having academic citations to demonstrate your ability to, your research ability and the fact that you've dug into the actual academic literature. So credible websites. There are quite a few here. So these are not credible websites. Wikipedia, Investopedia, businessballs.com, dictionary.com. Please do not use them. Some of them should be obvious. Wikipedia, I genuinely like. I think it's a fantastic project for human knowledge. However, it's not appropriate to cite because it is a wiki site, which means that it will change day to day, hour to hour. The contributors are generally anonymous, so you can't evaluate the contributors and the authors. And there is no fixed reference point for Wikipedia. So same thing goes for other wiki sites like Investopedia as well. They are not appropriate because of the type of website they are. However, if you do like to use Wikipedia to understand a topic, then remember that they do a well-written Wikipedia site, or page rather, will have references at the bottom, which you can follow, and if those are from credible websites, then those are something you can reference instead. So sites that we would like you to use instead, there's loads, but there are some particular recommendations I would make as well. So Harvard Business Review is non-academic, it's not a journal article, but it has fantastic, quite current information. Theconversation.com is a favorite of mine as well. It's a website set up by British academics to present an everyday explanation of their research. So it's based on academic research, but it is not consisting of peer-reviewed academic papers, but rather just articles discussing the research. So it's a non-academic source, it's quite accessible, it's quite easy to read, but it also provides lots of links to actual journal articles if you want to dig deeper. Now you will need lots of economic and financial data when you're considering new markets to enter, and there's a wealth of statistical information available through credible sites. So World Bank, the UN and the IMF have an absolute ton of data. They have dedicated data websites as well. So for example, I think it's data.imf.org as well as data.worldbank.org, which are dedicated websites just presenting statistical information and statistical data on various economic and monetary indicators for practically every country in the world. The Guardian, the BBC, the Times, Telegraph, there's a range of credible news sites you can reach for as well as we've discussed, credible citations from Wikipedia articles. So you're not referencing Wikipedia, you're referencing Wikipedia articles instead. So the citations at the bottom of Wikipedia articles. Right, in terms of structure, so as we said before, this is just a suggested structure. The actual precise structure is entirely up to you, but there are some things which may be useful to discuss. If we just take a look at this, so it is a formal report, formal business report. So we have to use a formal business report, formatting and conventions. But to run through this quickly, you have your title page. You should have your unit code, so it's BSS044-3, the assessment number, this is assessment 1, and your student ID. That's the 3 bits of information you need at minimum. Your executive summary, which is outside of the word count, but should be about 2 paragraphs or half a page maximum, simply summarizes 2 things: the premise or purpose of your report, so what is your report trying to do, and secondly, an overview of your major findings or your major recommendations. Which means that you cannot write your executive summary at the beginning of the process of writing your assessment. It is a summary of your report, so it should be written at the end, so you can actually have your finished report and you summarize those 2 key points. Firstly, what the premise or purpose of your report is, and secondly, what the major findings or the major recommendations of your report are. After your table of contents, then you would start the actual the word count begins from your introduction to your conclusion, and then with the addition of in this case Appendix B as well. So you have your introduction to your report, which does what a report always has to do. So again, explain the purpose of your report in more detail, provide any necessary background or contextual information, and give an overview of the structure of the rest of your report. And then we have several sections here that you could use to organize your assignment. So section A being an evaluation of the current global operations and international strategy is always a good place to start. So if you've got, I don't know, Tesla, for example, and you want to recommend a new market for Tesla to enter, you always want to provide kind of a baseline understanding of how they're currently operating and what current international strategy they're using. So it's vital kind of contextual information in order to evaluate your actual recommendations. And this is where having a company where you can get lots of good information on really is quite crucial. So section B, looking at country selection methods. So again, either if you're using Uppsala or you're using scanning, so talking through or you're using the OLI method. So you've got three major country selection methods that we've discussed in the classes this semester during this unit. So whichever one of those you think is appropriate for your context, and then having a discussion, again having at least citations to the textbook, if not other academic citations. Section C, evaluation of macro environmental trends. So these are political, economic, social trends that you think are useful, and then bringing in any broader issues that you think may be important for your recommendation as well. So whether it's legal risks you want to discuss, say legal systems, whether it's political systems, this would be the appropriate place for them. Section D, evaluation of operational and trade factors. This may be where you want to bring in discussions of forex, discussions of international supply chain management, looking at your potentially economic trading units, and discussion of trade barriers and tariffs. Section D would be the appropriate place to kind of place these issues and discussions. Section E being a discussion of any possible ethical issues. So if there are any ethical issues which you have come across in your research, this may be a good place you can at least acknowledge them. I don't think you've got time to have a full depth, lengthy discussion, but certainly acknowledging and briefly discussing or highlighting possible ethical issues in your recommendations. And then lastly, your discussion and justification of the entry modes. So again, part of the task is to not just select a new country to enter, but also to recommend an entry mode to use, whether it's foreign direct investment (FDI), whether it's an acquisition, whether it's exporting. So there's a range of different entry modes. There is an entire week, I think, as well that we covered entry modes on the unit. So making sure you look through those, use the academic concepts and models in that week to drive your discussion and ultimate justification of an entry mode. Then after your conclusion and reference list, you have the two required appendices. Firstly, the process log using the template available on the Brio shell, and your reflection on the assessment process. Okay, brilliant. I hope this has been useful, and yeah, thank you guys very much.